I am sure you guys have had a pocket full of narratives thrown your way, and I'm here to clear them up.
Uh, I don't think so.
Oh, I'm actually shocked then. I mean, we
Well,
don't
it
want to talk
depends.
about the legislation edits that we're currently talking about, any confusions about things that are being put forward,
Did
court rulings.
something happen that we need to be aware of?
Well, I mean, besides all the edits that we have on the current legislations that we're trying to put forward,
Are
I know
people complaining about it to you?
No, I'm more just kind of aware of, how DOJ's perception is at the moment, and I'm just trying to be transparent and have an open line of communication.
I got you. Sorry, you said narrative, so I kind of assume there's like stirring happening that we're unaware of.
There's always stirring, Nino. You know where we live.
Yeah. So I do want to bring a couple things up at the next justice meeting. Specifically, I'd like to understand like what our interfacing is going to look like. I know that you've been in attendance, but the vast majority of the justices have not. While they may have their reasons, I think at the cusp of those, the intent post-governor meetings was, hey, let's meet together. If the thing's brewing, we let the other parties know so that it's not, a shock, right? So there was some despair. There was some, a little bit of like, would have been nice to know that these 3 pieces of legislation were going to drop like in advance, so we'd be prepared. Now, at the end of the day, we did. I think we're doing a pretty good job between us and y'all in order to resolve some of the concerns that we got in there, and I think our concerns are mostly resolved now. I think the only exception being that that last bit, which I think we're just looking for further clarity on. I haven't seen the last update. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I completely. Let me start this conversation by saying I am 100% with you on that page. Funny enough, I will also be transparent that Weiss and I were not necessarily in agreement. There was a conversation we had with the governor's meeting or post the governor's meeting, I think, where it was just us, where we did say, as part of the DOJ, it like innately kind of ends up checking the constitutionality check, which I didn't really agree with. I like it. We are saying how we want to standardize the systems for legislation going forward. So I think us affirming it wasn't really beneficial to the branches. I think posting it in the same form that obviously every other branch has, where you guys post and then we have a conversation and then we affirm if it's constitutional or not, and we kind of have a back and forth, is far more fair. I do think if we want to have it go into the email chains and have a conversation there first, that's also an option.
I agree. I think a heads up is generally good because, how do I put this? By y'all being on the same page as us, you guys are going to have less fire come your way, right? So
I very much agree.
Because otherwise we end up, because like I've gotten a lot of phone calls, right, already about some of these things. I can't tell you what it's about at the moment, for their own privacy or whatever. But it allows like my office to be like, yes, we're aware of it. This is why it's happening, as opposed to listening to and not being able to provide feedback to whatever the complaints might be, right? So it makes the DOJ more of an enemy that way, right? Does that make sense?
After doing this for so many months, I very much agree. I'm on the same page with you on that front. I think this was just initially the conversation that we had about how we would put things up on the docket coming from the DOJ. Obviously, with the situation, I'm recognizing that this is not the best avenue and that it should be adjusted. So I think going into our internal channels, cool, we'll let you guys be aware. I mean, I know you and I had like a verbal conversation about what was happening with the not the judicial powers. What was it? The state marshals and the DOC legislation, where the entire intention was just to separate the power of a justice having to be the director of the San Andreas State Marshals. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the entire intention of us updating that legislation.
I think.
Did it also end up being, wait, give me, because I know what you're going to point is going to be here. Did it also end up being a opportunity for us to try and clean up verbiage? Yes. And I think might have overcooked that a little bit, and it's broad and problematic. I 100% on the same page with you.
Exactly
100%
that.
on the same page with you.
I think
am here to work with you.
Absolutely. And I believe that. And I think evidence has shown it with how quickly things are kind of churning. I think and trust me when I say I'm keeping my own cabinet in line, right? Transparently, there was some crashing out. I want to explain the why, right? Because the intent about a month and a half ago, right? And this is not your fault, right?
No,
you
it's
specifically
PTSD from my predecessors.
right?
I can't blame you.
But it's also that like we've got those outstanding audits, and the intent was that we roll them back and then we discuss how to resolve it, right? But instead of that discussion happening, it didn't happen, and now we've got these things, and we're like, hey, this has got verbiage in here that we originally audited, so what's going on? And
I think that wasn't the intention, and like we've had these conversations in the notes of what we've been editing, is that like, oh, here's the intent and how we're adapting and changing, and you could see everything except the end mark. I think we are getting to a very common ground on, which I'm very happy to see.
Yeah,
I
agree.
We've come to a pretty solid place with the judicial powers one, and I think everyone understands the intention with that.
Agreed.
And so now it's just the DOC one, which is I had like a 2-hour conversation also with Scotty, so I added a few more things in there that DOC brought up that I very much agree with. So if you want to check that out, now that'd be interesting.
There is a bit of a problem now that we're currently in because we have a 72-hour window, right?
I'll be honest.
I'd like to understand how we want to address that. I personally think we should pause it, make sure it's cooked.
I also
and then push it forward instead of potentially speed running it, right? Which I don't think is the intention, but it's what's it's
what's happening by us affirming it.
Yes,
and I agree with you.
I want to go
pause.
Go ahead.
I also think obviously when we do resubmit with the edits, it would reset the 72-hour clock.
I don't think it does, based on current legislation.
I feel like it should.
It will.
I feel like it's fair.
It
for
will
everyone
as
to
a
give
part of
everyone the
V3.
opportunity to read the edit. Oh, okay, because of V3. I see your point.
Exactly. So I think if we could ask that the DOJ stop, pause it for the time being, like say we're retracting it, and let's, my cabinet is, I think we only need like 2 days and then resubmit it. You know what I mean? And that I think will give us the bandwidth. Otherwise, we're opening the door to it passes, and then you get some audits coming your way. You know what I mean? I will be transparent. There are a lot of concerns coming from very different parties, and there are large intentions to audit. And I don't want to see that happen, especially with everything that's going on with the terrorism and all this shit. So I'm trying to be as transparent as I can without exposing the who, because
I'll be honest, I know that I'm dealing with a situation where this legislation was already kind of being spoken about, and there was a part of it that people wanted adopted, but like the key focus of this is entirely, honestly, limiting the power of the justices, where we do not have the direct, director position, the director position of the marshals. That is entirely the intention. And if it means that we have to go back to the previous legislation and only put in the amendment of not having,
I mean, you could.
We don't want to do, but
you could. I don't
have to get Weiss out of this seat.
We have to get. I agree with you. It's that while that may have been the intention, that's not what's in the document, right? Like we're now introducing a lot of new concepts. And while I think
it's not really new concept, it's broader concepts, which I agree with, and I think is problematic. And I'm with you on that one because it's
newer as a consequence of the broader language, right?
I agree.
And I think some of them have been addressed, like for example, the state of emergency, right?
Well, that's in the original legislation. That's why I literally copied the notes from the current legislation that we have about state emergency that has to follow like one of the 3 instances that we actually call it.
Yeah, I think we're let me rephrase. I think it's the grammatical concerns. Not grammatical, but more like the way things are worded, right? And I now keep in mind, right? Some of this is probably based in a lot of PTSD of the past, right?
Totally fair.
So I fully recognize that there may not be in like intentions, but it's hard. You and I talk, right? But not the rest of the city sees those conversations, right?
Of course.
So there's a level of trust here where I'm like, okay, well, I don't think this is what, and I tried to, trust me, there was a lot of defending I had to do the last 8 hours, or not 8 hours, but last night. Where I was like, I don't think this is what they mean, right? Like, that's what that sentence means. Like, I think it's meant to mean this, and I do think it's valuable for everyone that it does get clarified, especially because, like, a year from now, who knows, right? Everyone moves on. You end up with Carmine Costello as the justice, and, you know, you know what I'm saying?
No, I definitely understand.
So,
okay, so then for what we're currently cooking on, I just need to talk to the other justices about that last little bit, and we'll move forward from there. I mean, if people audit it, it's going to go back to what it currently is right now. It's, you know,
agreed.
It just sucks
I want to
because
see it. I want to
need-
see it advance. Personally,
I would love that, mostly because I know what the director position is doing with the confliction issues that we're having as justices, and I need to get Weiss out of there.
Maybe it should have, retroactively, it probably should have been just adding that line and then doing a broader rewrite. Personally, that's what we do.
With you, Nino, that was my suggestion. But you know what? Sometimes I guess people are just trying to be productive and are like, oh, well, we're already.
Well, with all due respect to the rest of them, you're showing up in the city and they're not. And yes, I'm going to hold that against them.
God damn it. Fair enough.
So,
I understand your point.
Yeah.
And if it comes to that, where these audits are genuinely hindering this legislation, I think that would be our next move.
Yeah.
Because I see the broader picture here of having to get that power separated. And then we can move forward from there. I would like for it to continue moving forward as it is. And if you would help me get this legislation to a point, and I know you have a great way with words, Nino, and do what you've already been doing of just explaining this is not the intention, this is the purpose. I would greatly appreciate it.
I can certainly do that. Now let's talk about big things and why this is optically going to be a challenge. That includes for me. DOC operating like what I just heard in the room over there. So I'll tell you what I've actually I am
also the direct oversight of the DOC, so I'm already inherently conflicted on any panel or like anything they put forward. I can't sit on anything of theirs. Just so you're aware.
I want to bring up some topics. I don't know how sensitive they are, but everyone in this circle is okay. Fuck. You know what? Let's have you and I chat, and I'd like Turner to join me. Everyone who can't be a part of this conversation, look, nothing personal. I want to protect you from potentially problems from entities. Yeah.
Well, seems like Corolla just couldn't handle that news.
Yeah. God damn it! This is what happens when I. All right. Can you guys give me Turner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I'm also sorry, Turner.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice to meet you. I'm Arcadia.
Yeah.
Arcadia? You said?
Yeah. Arcadia Greyson.
Hey.
Hey, I think,
Monument.
Yeah. Okay. I'm on my way.
Okay. I just don't want this to go further than it needs to. Turner is ex-law enforcement, so I'd like to... I'm including him in a lot of these conversations so that he can provide some insight from a law perspective.
Okay, I can appreciate that.
So I am aware that Scotty, you know, I mean, who isn't at this point, let the lifer out, right? Didn't notify anyone as far as I'm aware. Went to a grave site. Then a bunch of shit popped off. Okay, now it's you and me. All right. And then, of course, we had these court cases, yada, da, da, da. I love that Scotty's back. Great guy. I think he's the heart of the DOC. Whatever.
I agree.
However, I also was understand that DOC was about a week ago. Michael, could you give us just a second, please?
Yeah.
Just to prevent him from crashing out too.
No, of course.
Was possibly interfering with active investigations. My hands are in the air. I don't know whether it's true or false, but that's what I was hearing. Right. And then I heard that they're now kind of providing a investigative assistance to the marshals, question mark. I like that it is now being defined in this document. But my concern right now is, how are they doing so legally?
So the term deputizing isn't actually in the current martial legislation, but there is a piece of the legislation that does allow for marshals to utilize members of the public. Where is it? Martial legislation. We'd be just using the term deputizing because I think it's kind of
Better,
what was used in the past. And obviously now with the new legislation, it's being defined. Let's see, where is it? The San Andreas State Marshals reserve the right to recruit as they deem fit to their internal procedures. This will include an allowance of temporary authorization and extension of their powers to citizens of the state of San Andreas, should the circumstances be dramatic and necessary.
So
I'll be honest with you.
Fuck this, I'm out. Oh, I think this might be... I have a feeling that I don't think these are Greyson's ideas, because I am leaning towards, I think Greyson gets it because she's around. I hate using this argument. Thank you to everyone who's a justice that, you know, is actively giving their time, but there's a problem, right? Is that some of these decision makings are literally setting a very bad standard for everyone else in the city. Justices should, in my eyes, be so they're the ones that the law should be mimicking, right? Because they are the last shield between guilty and not guilty for a crime. And if they are the ones that are perceived to be trying to find this is our problem with Director Angel, quite frankly, is doing things like cheeky shit, right? Then you literally are opening, you're telling everyone else do the same thing. And you're providing like, well, they did it, so why can't we? Right? I'm thinking that might be what is happening here, just kind of based on the conversation, right? And I'm going to provide an example. Okay, there's this vague thing and you're saying, well, this is dramatic. How is it dramatic? It's a lifer on the loose. This isn't dramatic. If this is the definition of dramatic, then literally you're opening up so many Pandora's boxes at that stage, right? So much Pandora's boxes, right? Because you want to do something that you think might be fun and interesting, fine. But then do not hold the PD accountable. Do not hold people accountable, right? You can't anymore, right? And I want to say, for, you know, obviously Nino's got like a track record of people saying all kinds of nasty things, also OOC, not anyone on the server today, but in the past of, I'm doing this or Nino's doing that. YouTube videos claiming all kinds of things when I've been very much in character the entire time. But I bring that up, right? I bring it up because despite all of that, how often do you notice, like, even with what Nino can do, right? You notice that, like, I always make it a point to be 2 or 3 rungs above board, where we track every receipt. I don't give any money during the campaign week, right? I don't do any, like, special favors, right? Like a bunch of things to make sure my office is so above board, even though we don't need to, in the spirit of the intent of these things. But if the justices are not doing it in the spirit of this, then they can't be then they can't be trusted. But then that is also why we have to be so pedantic in the writing as a consequence, right? Where you can't just we're going to need you to define state of emergency, because apparently an inmate that's on the loose has you hiring random people. You can't be doing that, right? But they're opening up a very dangerous door as well, which is, if you do this, brother, like, you're asking people to impeach you, because you go and impeach over this. Of course you would, because now you're saying you have people that are not trained in law enforcement operating outside of their jurisdiction, right? They're circumventing jurisdictional rights. Like, if a single DOC steps on a scene for LSPD, literally they're you're and you could say, well, like, just impeach, but I mean, listen, bro, you know how bad things get, So I think I'm like demanding a little bit of, hopefully, the common sense. I think Greyson's gonna get it, but I'm gonna need to be pretty vocal about it. It's very dangerous. Yeah. Yeah, that includes legislative writing, yeah. But fundamentally, like I said, it seems like the common factor here historically has been, people making decisions while not actively being around, and that affects the entire city, right? It's hard to convince someone why something needs to be a certain way when they have no experience as to how the people interact and how interactions tend to go. Yeah, no receipts. Yeah, it's untracked. It's entirely untracked. This is effectively attempting to make a state of emergency without legislation. I mean, the thing is, like, I may just ask that straight up, like, who made is Weiss about to get impeached over this? You know what I mean? Am I missing something? The marshals deputized you. They don't have deputization power. Yeah. I mean, even the wording, it says like extreme circumstances or some shit. So you're saying, so a lifer being escaped, you're now going to do this. Okay, well, what happens when someone tries to help him? What happens? It's cooked. It's a very not thought out. This sounds like, to me, the intent, the clear, obvious intent of that law, that line, is like, if you have like, let's just spit an example. If there's like a role play event, right? The day he escaped, the DOC assist, right? The marshals. But after that day has ended, whether you capture him or not, they have to go back to their normal duties, right? By blanketing, okay, well, they're going to operate be like called upon as law enforcement for the entire arc that he's escaped. What happens next? That means every individual that they work with on him it's going to be affected, right? It's very dangerous. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to do that, but what should have happened is, if they needed this, they only push that into the legislation. That one paragraph that they update in legislation is the only thing that needs to be reviewed. It probably would have passed in 3 days, and now they can do it.